Exposed, incredible love of single dad saves CEO's daughter, a heartwarming, life-changing journey. In the charming town of Maplewood, a single dad named Joe took on the world one shift at a time. With tired eyes and a heart full of dreams for his 10-year-old daughter Lucy, he worked day and night at the local diner and sometimes, as a mechanic, just to give her a shot at a brighter future. Lucy, with her big dreams and even bigger imagination, often let her daydreams take flight. Inspired by tales of people who followed their hearts and broke free from the ordinary, the community was buzzing with excitement as they prepared for a charity event hosted by the local CEO, Mr. Caldwell. Everyone spoke of hope and change, but for Joe, it felt like yet another reminder of the gaps between their lives. As he cleaned tables and served burgers, he wished Lucy could attend. He wanted her to be part of something bigger, to feel that tug of possibility. One sunny afternoon, while he was pulling a double shift, Lucy discovered a new treasure, a special sparkly bracelet in a Cracker Jack box. "Dad!" she exclaimed, practically vibrating with excitement. "This could be my good luck charm." Joe chuckled, pulling her into a tight hug, his heart swelling with pride. Little did they know, fate was about to rock their world. Meanwhile, Grace Caldwell, the CEO's daughter, was tired of living in a bubble. She slipped away from her friends, fueled by curiosity and the desire to explore parts of Maplewood that had always been off-limits. But as evening fell, panic began to rise, and before she knew it, she found herself lost in a rougher part of town, surrounded by shadows that flickered under the fading sun. Just as a sense of dread settled over her, Joe emerged from the diner, the weight of his workday shifting in a heartbeat. Seeing her wide, terrified eyes, he instantly recognized the situation. Without a second thought, he dashed toward her, his heart racing with determination. "Hey, are you lost?" he asked gently, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Let us get you back home." This unexpected encounter sparked something beautiful. Joe, a devoted father, and Grace, a girl trapped in expectations, found common ground. As they walked back, both families, the working-class hero and the privileged daughter, began to intertwine in ways they never imagined. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. As the days unfolded, the friendship between Lucy, Grace, and Joe blossomed despite their vast differences. Joe embraced his role as a father figure for Grace, while Lucy learned that sometimes, life's boundaries are just illusions waiting to be broken. They bonded over dreams, aspirations, and the unyielding hope that anything was possible, even in a world that painted sharp lines between classes. But as the charity event approached, tensions grew. Joe found himself at a crossroads when his humble reputation was questioned amid a crowd full of glittering expectations. Would he stand tall against the unspoken prejudice? Or would the shadows of judgment dim the bright connections forged in light? With hearts pounding, both Joe and Grace realized the stakes were higher than they'd ever imagined. A chance to challenge the barriers separating their worlds stood on the horizon. As the night of the charity event drew near, a question lingered in the air. Would love, understanding, and the spirit of a small town be enough to heal the age-old wounds of socioeconomic divides, or would dark shadows continue to loom over them all? The night of the charity event arrived with all the excitement and anxiety of a first date. Joe stood in front of the diner's mirror, adjusting his frayed but clean shirt. He could feel the knot in his stomach tightening. Lucy had picked out his clothes, insisting that he look the part. "You'll knock their socks off, Dad," she had declared, her eyes sparkling with hope. Outside, twinkling lights decorated the community center, a vibrant reminder of what was at stake. Joe decided to take a deep breath. He couldn't let fear overshadow this moment. He was not just representing himself tonight, he was doing it for Lucy, for their dream of a better future. Arriving with Lucy, the sight of the rich and powerful mingling under the stars was almost surreal. Joe's heart raced as they stepped into the elegantly decorated hall. The chatter of laughter and the clinking of glasses filled the air, mixing with the catchy tunes of a live band. It felt like walking into a different world. Grace spotted them right away, her face lighting up. "Joe. Lucy. You made it." She rushed over, dressed in an elegant gown that made her look every bit the part of a CEO's daughter. Joe felt a swell of pride at how her eyes glimmered with genuine joy. Together, they made their way through the crowd, and Joe felt Lucy's small hand grip his tightly, as if anchoring him in this sea of unfamiliarity. As they mingled, Joe couldn't help but notice the subtle glances cast their way. He held his head high, reminding himself they were part of this, too. "What do you think?" he whispered to Lucy, who was entranced by the lavishness around them. "It's amazing, Dad. Look at those lights. And that cake." She beamed, her brilliance overshadowing any of his insecurities, but the evening took a sharp turn when Joe overheard a couple of guests whisper. "Did you hear about the mechanic in town? How is he even here?" One man's voice carried through the crowd like a cold breeze, igniting a smoldering ember of doubt in Joe's chest. Suddenly, Grace stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "He is here because he deserves to be. Joe is one of the best guys I know. You should hear the stories of how he takes care of his daughter." Joe was taken aback at her fierce defense. He could see the determination shining brightly in her eyes. They locked eyes for a moment, an unspoken connection passing between them. In that instant, Joe realized Grace was not just standing up for him, she was also standing against the invisible walls built by class and prejudice. But just when he felt buoyed by this overwhelming sense of solidarity, Mr. Caldwell appeared. Joe's throat tightened as he approached, his expression unreadable. "Grace," he said, his tone firm, "I need to speak to you. Now." As the two moved to a quieter corner, anxiety danced in Joe's stomach again. They were both at risk, Joe of losing this moment, Grace of facing her father's disapproval if he didn't accept her new friends. Lucy reached for Joe's hand, sensing his unease. "Dad, it's okay," she whispered, her bright eyes a mirror of hope. "They can't break us, right?" His heart ached at her faith. But would this moment be one of unity or division? Would love really lead the way, or would the night expose the shadows lurking beneath the surface? As tension thickened in the air, Joe leaned down to Lucy, his voice low. "Whatever happens, remember we're in this together." But just as his words settled, a sudden commotion erupted at the entrance. The doors swung open, and a group of uninvited guests stepped inside, disrupting the established order. The silence that fell was palpable, and all eyes turned to see what would unfold next. What shocking revelation could jeopardize everything they fought for? The crowd parted, faces straining to catch a glimpse of the unexpected arrivals. The air buzzed with a mix of curiosity and distress. Joe squinted, trying to make out who had barged in on their moment. His heart raced as he recognized a few familiar faces from the town, a collection of Joe's former friends, now little more than echoes from a past he had been trying to forget. "Is that?" Lucy whispered, her small fingers tightening around his. "Yeah," he replied, a knot forming in his throat. It was Rick and the boys, laughing too loudly, swaggering into a setting that was far from their usual hangout. They didn't belong here, yet somehow they seemed determined to stir chaos. Joe's stomach dropped as Rick spotted him and pointed, a wicked grin stretching across his face. "Look who we have here. The mechanic in a tuxedo. Must be a fancy night, huh?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably, and Joe could feel the heat rise in his cheeks. Lucy glanced up at him, confusion written all over her face. "Dad, who are they?" "They used to be friends," he managed, realizing how far removed his life had become from this moment. Rick continued, "What are you doing here, Joe? Don't tell me you're pretending to fit in with the big shots now." Laughter erupted behind him, a chorus of harsh, mocking sounds that sliced through the air like knives. Joe could feel everyone's eyes boring into him, assessing, judging. The weight of every whisper made him feel smaller, as if he were losing the thread of dignity he had just begun to weave. "Joe, ignore them," Lucy said softly, but he could see the worry swimming in her eyes. Just then, Grace emerged from her conversation with Mr. Caldwell, who had a frown etched on his face. She took in the scene, her expression shifting from confusion to determination. "Hey!" Grace called out, her voice firm. "What do you think you're doing?" Rick swung his gaze toward her, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "We're just having a little fun. Isn't that right, everyone?" He directed his attention back to Joe, leaning in closer, his tone dripping with condescension. "You really think you belong here? Look at you. A mechanic in a room full of executives and philanthropists." In a moment of pure clarity, Joe felt the anger surfacing, fueled by years of being looked down upon, years of fighting for Lucy's future, for their dignity. He took a breath, steeling himself. "I'm not pretending to be anything other than what I am," he said, his voice stronger than he felt. "I may fix cars, but I'm still here trying to make a difference for my daughter. And that matters more than your twisted version of respect." The silence that followed felt electric. Joe's heart thundered in his chest, both terrified of what he'd unleashed and relieved to have said it. Grace stood beside him, her presence a shield against the storm of ridicule. Lucy's eyes lit up, full of admiration. "That was brave, Dad." But before he could respond, Mr. Caldwell stepped forward, his commanding presence silencing the room. "I believe this event is about community support, not personal attacks. Joe may not have a suit worth thousands, but his character speaks volumes." As he spoke, Joe felt the backing of those around him. Heads nodded, people quietly whispered approval. But in the chaos, something deeper simmered beneath the surface. Rick's expression shifted from amusement to something darker. The tension in his stance was palpable, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Then, just before he turned to leave, Rick shot back one last taunt. "We'll see how long you can keep up this act, Joe. There's always a reckoning." As the group slowly drifted away, Joe realized the night was far from over. There would be fallout, he could feel it in his bones. His resolve strengthened, knowing he had to protect not just his dignity, but Lucy's hope as well. But the worst part. The painful hum of uncertainty clawed at him. How was he going to navigate this divide? Their lives hung in the balance, caught between the hungry whispers of prejudice and a flickering light of solidarity. As the music started again, Grace turned to Joe, emotions swirling in her eyes. "We need to talk. This isn't done." "It's just beginning," Joe nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something monumental. What more would he have to face tonight? Joe watched the crowd as they began to dissolve into smaller clusters, whispers of the earlier confrontation hanging in the air. It was hard to breathe, the heaviness in his chest growing heavier. Lucy squeezed his hand, her small fingers lending a warmth that grounded him. He glanced down and saw her wide eyes, filled with both fear and admiration, a rush of protectiveness surging through him. "Can we go home?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Joe opened his mouth, ready to agree, but Grace's determination held him in place. "We can't leave yet. Not when you just stood up for yourself, Joe." Her words sparked a flicker of hope within him, a belief that maybe he could withstand this storm after all. With a tight jaw, he surveyed the crowd. Though most people seemed to have returned to their conversations, a few pairs of eyes still lingered on him. He felt their judgment, but in that moment, he also felt the support from unexpected corners. Mr. Caldwell's steady gaze and the nods from others reminded him that he wasn't alone. "Let us find a quieter place to talk," he suggested to Grace, leading Lucy along. They drifted toward a corner where a large window overlooked the town square. Lights twinkled like stars across the darkness, but the comfort of the scene did little to ease the anxiety bubbling inside him. "Joe, what you did was incredible," Grace began, her voice steady. "But Rick isn't going to let this go. He'll come after you, and it won't just be words." I know, Joe said, glancing down at Lucy, who was now quietly playing with the shiny cufflinks on his jacket. But I can't let that stop me. I have to protect her. I have to show her that standing up for yourself matters. Grace nodded, her expression serious. You have to keep your head up, but we need a plan. Rick thrives on intimidation. If he tries something more than just words, we should be ready. Joe couldn't shake the fear of what might come next. Rick had always fought dirty. Do you think I should talk to him? Maybe try to smooth things over? No, Grace said firmly, shaking her head. This isn't about negotiation. It's about standing your ground. You've made a choice to be better than who you were. He won't see it that way, and he's not the type to back down easily. As they spoke, Lucy peered outside, her innocent curiosity breaking through the tension. Look at the stars, Dad. They're so pretty. The brightness of her smile pulled at Joe's heartstrings, a reminder of why he fought so hard. Yeah, they are, he murmured, his thoughts drifting as he admired how she found joy in the simplest things. But suddenly, his mind raced with the vision of Rick grimacing, eyes filled with malice. The harsh truth weighed heavy, that reckoning Rick spoke of wouldn't be far off. I don't want you to worry, sweetheart, Joe said, kneeling to meet her eye. Whatever happens, we will get through it together. Lucy's bright expression shifted, questions flickering behind her gaze. But what if he asked me again? He swallowed hard, shooting a glance at Grace, who melted at Lucy's innocent concern. We'll face it. Together. His answer felt hollow, but it was the only promise he could hold on to right now. The reality of the evening settled down on him like a heavy cloak, suffocating yet warming. Yet, with every moment, there was a steadfast resolve igniting within him, a fire burning against the impending darkness. But deep inside, panic clawed like thorns. What would the fallout look like? Would Rick's next move push them into deeper danger, or could they hold their ground against his relentless pursuit? As the music swelled again, Joe stood, an unsettling determination mirroring the flickering lights outside. The night had only begun, and with it, challenges that threatened more than just his dignity. Would he be ready to confront the permanence of Rick's words next time? Would standing up for himself expose more than he could anticipate? The questions loomed heavy as he took a deep breath. What would this journey cost him now? Joe felt the weight of the night pressing down on him like a storm cloud threatening to burst. The noise of laughter and conversation faded into a low hum as he tried to focus on Lucy's bright face. She was his anchor, her innocence a stark contrast to the threat that loomed over them. The way her small hands clutched the lapel of his jacket filled him with both pride and sorrow. Let us get some ice cream, he suggested, hoping to shift the mood, to infuse their evening with a flicker of normalcy. Lucy's face lit up instantly. Yay! Can I get chocolate? She asked, her joy breaking through the tension surrounding them. Of course. Joe smiled, the simple act of making her happy pushing back a part of the darkness that engulfed him. He turned to Grace, whose brow still furrowed with concern. You coming? She hesitated, clearly torn between the desire to take care of Lucy and the reality of the danger posed by Rick. I'll keep an eye out. Just be careful, okay? Joe nodded, aware of the tension that lay just beneath the surface. He led Lucy away from the crowd, each step a commitment to stay steadfast. Outside, the crisp air felt refreshing, a stark contrast to the swirling confusion inside. As they approached the small ice cream stand, the bright colors and cheerful sounds drew Lucy in like a moth to a flame. She bounced on her feet while scanning the flavors, her giggles infectious. The shop was bustling, kids laughing, parents chatting, and for a moment, Joe felt a sense of normalcy washing over him. Can I have sprinkles too? Lucy asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Sure thing, Joe replied, feeling a surge of warmth as she skipped to the counter. As he ordered, he noticed a group of familiar faces eyeing him from the corner of the shop, whispers breaking into laughter. Joe's heart sank. The laughter twisted into jeers in his mind, and he felt the familiar pang of insecurity settle in. "Dad! Look!" Lucy's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She held up her cup, proud of the mountain of chocolate ice cream piled high with a rainbow of sprinkles. "Wow, that looks incredible," he said, forcing himself to smile. "Just like you." But as they moved to the side to enjoy their treats, Joe couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The laughter continued, but he forced himself to focus on Lucy. She was a beacon of light, a reminder that this moment was about them, not about those who would try to tear them down. "Can we sit by the window?" she asked, pointing to a small table filled with darkness and twinkling stars through the glass. "Of course," Joe replied, guiding her to the seat. They settled in, and for a moment, it felt like they were in their own little world, insulated from the turmoil around them. However, it wasn't long before the door swung open, and in walked Rick. Joe's pulse quickened. He was the embodiment of trouble and darkness, everything Joe feared would threaten Lucy's innocence. Rick's gaze scanned the room and landed directly on Joe. There was no questioning that confrontation loomed. "Joe!" Rick called out, his voice smooth but edged with ice, as he approached their table. Lucy looked up, wide-eyed, sensing the shift in the air. Joe swallowed hard, the lightness of their moment evaporating. "What do you want, Rick?" he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I think it's time we talked," Rick said, his grin unsettling. The irony of the cheerful ice cream shop was lost as tension filled the space between them. "Dad?" Lucy asked, sensing the change. Her small hand reached out for him, fingers tightening around his. Joe glanced between the man who had caused so much pain and the daughter he vowed to protect. The storm was here, and it would take everything in him to weather it. Could he stand his ground and shield Lucy from Rick's influence? The sweetness of the ice cream could not mask the bitterness of the confrontation that was about to unfold. What is he planning? Joe's heart raced as he held Lucy closer. The question hung in the air, heavy and foreboding, as he braced himself for the battle ahead. Rick leaned against the table, that grin still plastered across his face, and for a moment, everything felt like it was slowing down. The laughter and chatter faded into a distant echo. Joe could only hear the rhythmic thump of his own heart, pounding in his chest like a war drum. "Let us not make this harder than it needs to be, Joe," Rick said smoothly. "I just want to talk about what happened last time. How about we step outside?" "No." Joe felt the heat rising in him. He tightened his grip on Lucy's hand, the warmth of her small fingers grounding him. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it right here." Lucy looked at Joe, uncertainty shadowing her innocent eyes. "Dad? Who is he?" she asked softly, glancing between them. That single question pierced through him with the sharpness of an ice pick. "Just a business associate," Joe managed to say, forcing a smile. He hated lying to her but felt the desperation to shield her from the truth. She didn't need to know about the history of anger, regret, and manipulation that hung between him and Rick. "Business? That's boring," Lucy chirped, her childlike innocence restored as she shoved a spoonful of ice cream into her mouth. The moment felt like a lifeline, the last bit of sweetness before a storm. Rick's laugh was like glass shattering. "Boring? I assure you, Lucy, business can be very exciting. But let's focus on your dad for now." He leaned closer. "You see, Joe, it's time for you to pay up. We still have unfinished business." Joe felt a chill creep up his spine. Unfinished business. Those words dripped with menace. He had tried so hard to put distance between himself and that part of his life. "I don't owe you anything," he said, his voice steadier now. "Is that so?" Rick raised an eyebrow. "Because it seems I may have something you want information. And if you don't cooperate," well, he paused, letting the implication sink in. "Let's just say, I have my ways of making people talk." Panic bubbled beneath the surface of Joe's calm demeanor. "What are you talking about?" I have ways to get to you, Joe. To your family, to Lucy, Rick said, his voice low and dangerous. You have no idea what I can do. So, think about that when you decide how to handle this. The words felt like a punch to the gut. Joe glanced at Lucy, who was blissfully unaware of the threat looming over them. He couldn't let her see him falter. You don't scare me, he said, his voice defiant but inside, fear clawed at him. Rick chuckled, shaking his head slightly. You should be scared. Because I know you're just one bad decision away from losing everything. I'll be in touch. With that, Rick pushed off the table and walked out, a shadow crossing over the bright world Joe had tried so hard to create for Lucy. Joe took a deep breath, but the air felt thick and suffocating. Everything's okay, Luce, he said, forcing his smile back. Just a misunderstanding. Lucy didn't look convinced. Can I have more sprinkles? She asked, and that innocent request broke Joe's heart a little more. She didn't know what kind of monster lurked outside their bubble. Sure. Let us order some nice big sprinkles, he said, his voice trembling slightly as he stood to get more. The normalcy felt like a thin veneer over the chaos just entering their lives. His mind raced. How could he protect Lucy? What did Rick really want? Paranoia nipped at him, and he knew the battle was just beginning. As he glanced back at Lucy, her spoon poised over her cup, he felt an overwhelming surge of determination. He would do anything to keep her safe even if it meant facing the darkness that threatened to consume them both, but he also had a feeling the storm was only just gathering strength. What would he do when Rick inevitably struck again? The moment Joe stepped away, his heart raced. The sound of laughter faded, replaced by the pulse of fear in his ears. He approached the counter, but all he could think about was Rick and his unsettling calm. It was like a game of chess, and Joe felt he was losing. More sprinkles? The cashier asked, her voice light, oblivious to his turmoil. He nodded mechanically, his eyes fixed on Lucy. She was blissfully scooping up ice cream, her laughter mixing with the sweet scents of the parlor. Just moments ago, everything had felt so perfect. Their routine outings to this place brought him joy. He cherished seeing her smile, her lightness, everything he fought to protect. But now a dark shadow threatened to darken that carefree existence. Dad! Lucy called out, her voice bright with excitement. Look! He turned to her, and his heart melted at her happiness. She was holding a mountain of sprinkles that wobbled precariously on top of her sundae. Can I eat it now? Of course. Joe smiled, though it felt strained. He wished so badly that they could stay in this moment forever, wrapped in joy, safe from worry. But worry hovered like a storm cloud. As Joe returned to the table, he set the sundae down in front of Lucy, who clapped her hands in delight. Each scoop, each sprinkle felt like a promise, a soft reminder of his duty to shield her from the evils of the world. Suddenly, the bell above the door jingled, and Joe's heart sank. Rick stepped back inside, and the atmosphere shifted like a tightening noose. The cheerful chatter of the parlor smudged into a faint background noise, and Joe's spine straightened, instincts flaring up for fight or flight. Enjoying your time? Rick said with an air of casual malice, his gaze settling on Lucy. Ah, sweet little Lucy, you have such lovely taste in desserts. Hey! Joe stepped in front of his daughter, his voice steady but laced with tension. You can't talk to her. Rick's grin widened. Oh, but I can. After all, my business with you involves her. He pointed to Lucy as if she were merely a pawn in his game. I believe she has everything to do with what I need from you and what you fear losing. Joe clenched his fists, fighting the urge to lash out. Leave her out of this. But she is the key to so much more, don't you see? Just imagine what would happen if word got out about your past or your choices. Rick's voice turned silky and menacing. Think about it, Joe. Joe swallowed hard, desperation pulling at him. You're lying. You won't do anything to her. I don't have to, Rick said, casually leaning against the counter. I only need you to understand the stakes at play. All I want is a little cooperation, Joe. It's so simple." Lucy, oblivious, continued to pile more sprinkles onto her sundae as if everything were normal. "Look, Dad. It's a mountain." Joe's heart ached. How could he explain to her the gravity of this situation? Here she was, in a world of candy and colors, while the shadows of reality crept ever closer. "I'm not scared of you," Joe finally said, lifting his chin defiantly, each word a promise made to Lucy. "Get away from us." Rick stared, surprise flashing across his face before it hardened into amusement. "That's precisely what you should be. Because the moment you pretend I'm not a threat is the moment you risk everything." As Joe gripped the edge of the table, every instinct screamed at him to protect Lucy at all costs. A sudden thought struck him: what did Rick really know? Before he could voice the question, Rick turned and walked away, that sinister smile lingering on his lips. Joe exhaled shakily, heart pounding. The battle was only beginning, and there lay a deeper mystery wrapped in Rick's threats. He had to find out how to turn the tables before it was too late. What would Rick do next, and how could Joe keep Lucy safe in a world where shadows danced so dangerously close? Joe sat in silence, his heart still racing. The jubilant sounds around him felt surreal, like a veil had settled over the world. Children laughed, mothers chatted, and the distant sound of being together hung in the air while he was ensnared in dread. Lucy giggled, blissfully unaware of the darkness brewing just beneath their bright surroundings. The weight of it all threatened to pull him under. He leaned closer to Lucy, forcing a smile. "Hey, monster sprinkles. You ready for a taste?" "Yup," she exclaimed, scooping up a large spoonful of her towering sundae. She watched as the colors of sprinkles danced against the white ice cream before plunging the spoon in triumph. How could he let her see the fear that gnawed at him? The sunlight filtered through the entrance and it seemed like a small blessing, but he knew that shadows could stretch and darken. "Are we still going to the park after this?" Lucy asked, frosting remnants smeared across her cheek. "Of course. Just let me finish up here first." He forced lightness into his voice, trying to fill the moment with assurance. But every lick of that ice cream tasted like deception. That he had to think. Rick's words unsettled him. Were they just threats, or did he truly have leverage? Joe knew he had a past, one he'd buried for Lucy's sake. But what did it matter if it meant revealing it would hurt her? "I want chocolate sprinkles next time." Lucy's laughter rang out, innocent and bright. Joe couldn't help but laugh with her, even if it felt broken. Suddenly, as if summoned by his thoughts, Rick appeared once more at the edge of the parlor, watching. Joe felt a chill, instinctively putting his arm around Lucy, pulling her close. "Everything okay?" she asked, her brows furrowing in concern. "Absolutely," he lied, forcing another smile. "Just a little chilly in here, I think." But Rick didn't move. The sinister calm radiated from him in waves. It was unsettling and masked the worry lines Joe never wanted her to see. Then, Rick spoke, cutting through the warmth around them like a blade. "Your little girl seems to be enjoying herself, Joe. Just remember, happiness can be fleeting, especially when it's built on shaky ground." "Stop." Joe shot back, feeling the heat of anger rise within. "You're crossing lines you don't want to cross." "Is that so?" Rick raised an eyebrow, his grin lingering unnervingly. "Maybe it's time you realize that the past can resurface in ways you least expect." "Dad?" Lucy asked, catching the tension in the air. Her eyes darted between them, the only child left in this adult battle. "Go on, Lucy," Joe urged gently, "finish your sundae. We have to get to the park soon." Joe tried to focus, but every sense was diverted to Rick. What did he want? What lay behind those eyes? Could he expose Joe's past? The thought sent a surge of heat through him. "You think your little threats scare me?" Joe leaned forward, gravel in his voice. "You don't know what I've been through or what I'm willing to do for her." Rick regarded him with a maddening amusement. Ah, but therein lies the danger. You might underestimate the very thing that makes you weak. All it takes is one wrong move. His heart thudded. Joe knew it wouldn't just be a physical battle, it would rain through the emotions, shaking everything he held dear. Every word Rick uttered felt like a truth, or perhaps a cleverly disguised lie. As Rick turned away again, a sense of dread lingered, almost tasting metallic in his mouth. Joe watched, feeling the need to act intensify like a pulse. He couldn't let this monster ruin his life. He couldn't let it touch Lucy. "Dad, can I have a little of your sundae?" Lucy asked, eyes sparkling. Joe took a breath, pushing back the darkness creeping in. For Lucy, he would fight. "Sure, sweetheart. Let us make it a family mountain," he said with a determination that gave him hope, but even as he scooped the ice cream, the questions loomed heavy. What if Rick came back? What if he couldn't protect Lucy after all? As they stood to leave, a notification buzzed in Joe's pocket. Glancing at it, his heart raced again. What awaited him outside those doors, and was Lucy truly safe? The world felt unsafe. He'd have to make some difficult choices soon, and everything was about to shift. Joe stepped outside the parlor, the sounds of laughter fading as the chill of reality washed over him. The sunlight felt less comforting now, more like a spotlight exposing the shadows he wished to keep hidden. Lucy hopped beside him, oblivious, her laughter ringing like a bell while there was a knot in Joe's stomach that wouldn't loosen. "Look, Dad. The swings," she shouted, pointing toward the park entrance, a delightful burst of color, where children swung high against the blue sky. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and for a fleeting moment, Joe couldn't help but smile. But his heart was heavy with worry, the frustrations of adult life tugging at his mind. As they walked toward the park, the bright energy of the day clashed with the darkness Rick brought. Joe kept glancing back, half expecting to find Rick lurking just behind. Each sound, a rustle in the leaves, sent a shiver through him. "Are you coming, Dad?" Lucy called, her small voice full of joy. She was already running ahead, her braids bouncing with each leap. "Yeah, I'm right behind you," Joe replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He watched her take off, creating tiny clouds of dust on the path. It hurt to hold back the truth from her, to keep the monster at bay and create this reality for her, if only for today. They reached the swings, Lucy scrambling onto one and soaring high into the air, arms wide open. "Look! I'm flying," she declared, her laughter light and pure. Each giggle cut through Joe's tension, but even the sight of her happiness didn't erase the anxiety lurking beneath it all. "Hey, Lucy!" Joe called out. "Just remember to keep your arms in the swing." I know. Look at me." She shouted back, but suddenly, she seemed to lose focus. Joe's heartbeat quickened as he saw her swing start to tip dangerously high. Instinct kicked in, and he dashed forward, grabbing the swing just in time. "Whoa there, little Miss Daredevil," he said, half laughing, half scolding. Lucy's eyes sparkled, but he noticed a flicker of apprehension there too. She picked up on his tension, sensing the unease that hovered like a cloud. "Are you okay, Dad?" she asked softly, her playful demeanor fading as concern laced her voice. "I'm fine, honey," he assured her, wishing he could sound more convincing. "Just wanted to make sure you're safe." With Lucy back in her swing, Joe sat on a nearby bench, forcing himself to breathe deeper. He tried to push away the idea of Rick, the threat diminishing in the presence of the park's vibrant colors and children's laughter. But the screens of his phone buzzed again, and he felt a pulse of dread coursing through him. He opened the message, a single line from an unknown number. "You can't hide forever, Joe." His heart plummeted. Lucy was still swinging, lost in bliss, while he was spiraling into panic. How could he protect her when he felt so vulnerable himself? What could he do to secure their fragile peace? "Dad, watch this," Lucy called, lifting her legs and propelling herself higher. Joe forced a smile, even if it felt heavy on his face. He wanted so badly to drown in her innocence, to shield her from the chaos. But the weight of everything hung over him, pressing down and suffocating. As he sat there, the world faded around him, consumed by the thought of what needed to be done. He had to confront his past. Rick wouldn't he let him go without his reckoning. What if Rick was right about everything? What if his past came roaring back to crush them both? The lingering questions became unbearable. "Lucy!" he shouted, pride and fear merging in his voice. "How about we grab some ice cream before heading home?" "Okay." Her smile lit up the shadowy corners of his mind, pushing back the darkness, but he knew it was only temporary. As they walked toward the ice cream truck, Joe's phone buzzed again. Another message. This time even more ominous. "Are you ready to face the truth?" His stomach churned as he grasped Lucy's little hand. Was there a way to protect her? Ignoring the message would only make it worse. There was no escaping his past now. It was coming back at breakneck speed, and he needed to be ready. But was he prepared for what lay ahead? The park faded into the background as Joe's mind swirled. Lucy skipped through the world with bright eyes, but every cheerful laugh only amplified the gnawing worry in his heart. The icy grip of reality clenched tighter on him. Rick was not done. The threat he posed loomed like a storm, and Joe had to be the shield that protected Lucy from it all. Taking a deep breath, he picked up his phone, only to realize he needed to block out those distractions. Lucy's laughter rang like a bell in the air, and he watched her swing with the thrill of flight, her small legs kicking higher with each push. In that moment of innocence, he couldn't let her see his concern. "Higher, Daddy. I want to reach the clouds." Lucy giggled, her voice pure joy. "All right. Shoot for the stars, kiddo." He replied, his voice jovial, despite the turmoil inside. As her laughter filled the air, he resolved to focus. He couldn't change the past or Rick's intentions, but he could take control of the present. A sudden thought struck him. He had the power to change the narrative. He needed allies, people who could help shield Lucy and him from Rick's dark plans. His mind raced to the community, the friends he had built over time. They wouldn't he let him face this monster alone. "Lucy, how about a game?" he called out, weaving joy into his words. "What game, Dad?" Her brows furrowed with curiosity, ready for anything to brighten the moment. "We're going to form our own superhero team," he declared, excitement bubbling. "And we need a good plan to beat the villains hiding in the shadows." She clapped her hands, enthusiasm radiating off her. That was it, he could rally the spirit of their community around this fight. "Can I be the Super Sprinkles girl?" she declared proudly, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "For sure. Super Sprinkles girl is our secret weapon." Their laughter echoed, a battle cry against the impending darkness. He would bring the community together, they were stronger united. Kids played around them, carefree and unbothered, and as he watched Lucy beam with joy, a sense of determination settled in. While she swung, Joe sought out familiar faces lingering by the park's entrance. Marta with her radiant smile and Jeremy, the friendly dad with a knack for handyman work. Suddenly, the spark of hope ignited like a beacon. "Hey, come here." Joe waved them over, his heart pounding with anticipation. They approached, puzzled expressions on their faces. "Everything okay?" Jeremy asked, concern evident. "Listen, I need your help," Joe said, his voice steady but earnest. "I'm facing a situation that has gotten serious. It's about Lucy's safety, and I can't do it alone." "What do you mean?" Marta leaned in closer. "There's someone who has been threatening us. I refuse to be afraid. We need to stand together." Marta nodded, eyes igniting with understanding. "We've built a community here, Joe. No one messes with our own. We will help you." Each word set Joe's heart on fire. It was more than he dared hope. Community, support, and trust were his weapons now. "Lucy, come join the discussion," he shouted, her face lit up as she raced over, her excitement rendering her smile even more radiant. "What were we talking about?" Joe smiled. "We're forming our superhero team. And do you know what superheroes need?" Lucy giggled. "What?" "Friends and family. Will you help us?" "Of course. I'll pick out the colors for my outfit." She twirled, a whirlwind of joy. As laughter erupted around them, Joe felt the heaviness lift. Rick may have been a looming shadow, but they weren't alone. He had community, friendship, and Lucy's bright spirit to fortify their mission against the darkness ahead. "Remember, you're our secret weapon," Joe reminded Lucy, squeezing her hand gently. "Yeah. I'll sprinkle kindness everywhere," she proclaimed, her small fist pumping in the air. As they strategized, he truly believed they would face whatever came next. The fear still fluttered in his chest, but he knew that together, they could withstand anything. As the late afternoon sun began to set, casting golden hues across the park, Joe pulled Lucy close. Her laughter felt like music, sprinkling joy into the world that had seemed so heavy just moments before. "Ready for action?" he asked, heart full. "I was born ready," Lucy exclaimed, her grin widening, and with that, Joe knew they could walk into their future not as two vulnerable souls against the world, but as a united front, ready to take on whatever lay ahead. Together, they would rise, shadows be damned, the power of love and community intertwined would be their armor as they mounted their heroic journey, a new chapter beginning in Maplewood. This was where hope thrived, where possibility was limitless, and where the heart of a true hero beckoned on the horizon. Now more than ever, Joe realized love was their greatest strength, and they would not only survive, they would flourish. And amidst the laughter, they took their first steps forward into the warmth of the new tomorrow. Don't let this moment slip away. You need to subscribe now to keep following this incredible journey and not miss the exclusive stories waiting for you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this heartwarming tale. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending because we want to hear from you. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to show your support, because only true fans understand the importance of these actions. Let us build this community together.